conference championships have now been lined up in college football. We're going to go over the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and the Mountain West, which are probably going to be the 5 big conferences at stake in the CFP bracket. So we'll start at the top. SEC championship game, Texas versus Georgia in Atlanta. Second matchup of the SEC powerhouses of the year. How do you feel about this one?
I kind of had a feeling all along that it would be Georgia, Texas for some reason at the beginning of this season. Like I know I said a few weeks back, Tennessee, Texas, but that's just how the everything was looking and unfolding.
Right.
And Georgia played a hell of a game against Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech's a really great football team, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with next year. But that's a sidebar. You know, I think Georgia, Texas. It's hard to beat the same team twice.
Right.
And the last outing, it was 30-15. It was a little lopsided. The score didn't really justify the game, if you ask me.
Carson Beck, 3 interceptions.
Yeah, exactly. But Carson Beck has kind of turned it around. In the last few games that I've seen, he's actually dialed in a little bit more, and he's a little bit more accurate, making better passes. You know, it's gonna come down to the wire, I think, this time.
Yeah.
Definitely see a Georgia Bulldogs victory here. But I'd venture to say 34-27, something like that.
Right. Right. I could actually, I'm going to take Georgia for the win as well. Not with being a homer, but just for the sheer fact that I think Georgia has been tested more this year. You know, we've seen the Tennessee, the Florida, the Kentucky, the Alabama games, the Georgia Tech games of the year. And I just think Georgia is really built for any tough matchup that they have from here on out, especially considering how Carson Beck has been playing for the last month. Like you said, no interception since the Ole Miss game. And that one was a tip pass from a defensive lineman. So he hasn't thrown a pick to his own fault in over a month. And we've seen Texas, I was just saying earlier before you got on, Texas hasn't really had that put the team away victory this year. Like, yes, they beat Michigan early on, and yes, they beat Oklahoma, but those teams aren't anything necessarily to look at. Now, yes, Oklahoma did beat Alabama, but let's not go and confuse and say that that's a big win for Texas, because the one big game on their home soil against Georgia, they lose 30-15. They're down 23-0. Now they have the chance to right that. But I think it's going to be a defensive stalemate in this one. I really, really do, man. I think, the way that Texas just played against A&M, not allowing any offensive points. Yes, Georgia did just give up 42 to Georgia Tech as well. They haven't done that. I can't remember the last time Georgia gave up over 40. I think it's been almost a decade statistically since that's happened. So they're going to be ready to play that tough defense. I can see Georgia winning this one to the tune of maybe 21-17, 21-20 possibly. It's going to be a very close game for sure. Now let's go over to your conference, man, in the ACC championship game, as we had some absolute craziness unfold, as we will have SMU facing off against Clemson, not the Miami Hurricanes. Tell me how you feel about this one coming up. It's going to be a really solid one this weekend too.
I always had this sneaky suspicion that Clemson was going to get in there somehow, some way.
Right.
And if you remember a few weeks back, and even further back than that, I said Miami was at jeopardy for losing to either Duke, Georgia Tech, or Syracuse. And
Duke was the one that I couldn't remember.
Right. So they lost to Georgia Tech. They lost to Syracuse. And I cannot remember the Duke score. It evades me at this time. But, Clemson, it just kind of all fell into place for them. And it's good old Clemson. They've been in the ACC hunt for the last 10 years.
Right.
They've been there. But unfortunately, I think they're going to meet their demise against SMU. They're just built different, dude. That's the ACC team, now ACC team, playing SEC football. To me, kind of like what Clemson and Florida State used to be. SMU just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I think they beat Clemson, not handily. I think it's a little close, because Clemson's still a great football team. They run that air raid offense. It's hard to defend. But ultimately, I think the Mustangs get the victory in this one, and I'd be happy for them.
Yeah, it would be a big time win for SMU, no doubt about that, man. I think when you take a look at both of these programs, Clemson, like you said, they've been in the ACC hunt for, it feels like the last decade for sure. And they've been that team before that's held some nice talent, that's had some great coaching, that's been in some national championships and in some big games over that last decade, like you talk about. And I think when you just look at how Clemson's kind of been able to claw and scratch their way up the top 25, down the
Mhm.
top 25, starting the year at number 14, understanding that they do have some solid talent over there and that they have rightfully earned their spot in the ACC championship game as well. And then you look at SMU just being able to really claw their way through the whole season as well, feeling like they're kind of being disrespected by the committee, having some
Mhm.
grinding out
Absolutely.
wins, wondering if people are even looking at them because of the likes of the Clemson and the likes of, a potential Miami. And even earlier in the year when Florida State and Boston College are kind of stealing a lot of the ACC spotlight. I'm going to take Clemson to win this one. I think it's going to be another close one as well. It's going to put Clemson as one of those top 4 seeds, and they will get the bye in the playoffs, which will feel crazy, or maybe they'll come in at that 12. Let me take a look real quick at the screenshot that I have here of the rankings because it is kind of weird. And I know we're going to talk about the rankings here in a minute, but if they win
Mhm.
with where Clemson is, yeah, because Clemson's not even the first or second out. So that's going to be so interesting to watch Clemson
Yeah.
jump up, outside of
Yeah.
the top 15. They would probably come in. Well, I don't know because Arizona State is what, 15? Is that what that says
Right.
right there?
So
So if
just
Arizona
think
State's
about
15, Clemson's probably going to get in at the 12. It's going to be crazy, man. And that's what we were talking about earlier over the phone. Reese Davis saying, there's kind of that fix that needs to happen within those rules. But anyways, sorry to venture off there. It's going to be
Oh, yeah,
crazy to
no
see how
problem.
it plays out, though. Clemson, I think, will win this one for
Well,
sure.
just think about if Clemson wins the ACC, SMU will still be in the playoff, right? They're not gonna drop that bad.
Right.
And then Georgia, if they win the SEC, they're the 4 seed, so
For
Texas
sure.
is gonna drop just a tad.
Yep.
So Alabama is gonna be out, and you're gonna have a whole mix up. It's gonna shake everything.
Yep.
It's gonna be really interesting.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's crazy because you just look at it, right? Like Clemson being outside that, if they lost, because SMU is
4? Are they not?
no, they're the number 8 team. It's
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
they're the number 8 team in the country, but they're seeded third because they're projected to be the third
Right, right,
highest
right.
ranked winner of a conference. So it's like if SMU loses, I think they could still possibly be in because they're, a 2-loss team. Clemson would possibly go to the 12, and then it's like, does Arizona or Arizona or Iowa State pop in?
Mhm.
Boise State still stays in there. It's so weird to like
It's
process because
convoluted.
there's so many different outcomes of it, But
Yeah,
yeah, if Clemson wins the ACC, it's going to mess it all up. I think you'd have Georgia at that, Georgia with the top seed, kind of
yeah.
foreshadowing. I think Boise State and Oregon would be a top seed. Then you'd have Clemson, and then let's just say I'm going to take Iowa State. We'll get into more of the predictions here
The
in a second,
committee
but
has their work cut out for them this year.
yeah, they do. And then it's like you know yeah, you'd have to put Clemson at the 12.
Mhm.
You'd have to move, but then that's weird because you have Arizona State at the 15. So it's like you have a 15 and
Well, if
what
they
is
win the conference, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
right, right. What's Clemson's ranking right now?
yeah.
Hold on. Or
I know
wait,
they're
no,
in the top
it's
20.
right here. Yeah. So you would have Clemson at the 17 and possibly either Iowa State. So you have the 15, 16, and 17 having to bid to get into the top 12.
It's
And then
very
that would
interesting.
inadvertently maybe knock out Boise State. I don't know, man.
They like I said, they're gonna have to really hunker down. That's why I was saying, man, they could really benefit from a little bit of aid from like an AI or BCS style
Yeah.
system here.
Yeah. Because and we'll get to the Oregon Penn State Big Ten championship in a minute. I'm like trying to process. You'd have Georgia, Oregon,
It's a mouthful.
Clemson, I guess, Boise State, and then yeah, Arizona State. Or no, I
Arizona
think you'd have
State are good,
Clemson at the
man.
12. Georgia and Oregon are in,
Mhm.
and then I think you have Boise State and Arizona State in the top? That's so crazy. They
Mhm.
would literally have a first round bye.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to overanalyze it, but I'm like, am I processing this right? That we're gonna have someone
Oh,
outside of the
yeah.
12, jump in. But anyways, all right. So not to kind of send
I think the
everyone off the
committee
rails.
didn't take any of this into account when they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be a 12 team, everybody's gonna get their fair shake." And it's
Right.
like, "Oh, yeah? Look at Miami being FSU last season."
Something about them Florida college football teams, they can't seem to catch a
Yeah.
break in these rankings, man.
Not to
Uh,
I mean, you know me, I hate the Canes more than anybody,
yeah.
but, you know, I gotta give them, my sympathies from
Right.
Tallahassee.
Right. Right. All right. Big Ten championship game. Oregon versus Penn State. Who you got?
Oh, you already know I got the Ducks, man. When they're in playoff mode,
Yeah.
they're something else.
Yeah.
They are something else. FSU learned our lesson in the 2014 Rose Bowl, man. When they sacked
Yeah.
Jameis and got that, oh man, that was
Marcus
that was
Mariota.
terrible.
Yep.
Marcus Mariota had
Yep.
himself a game. I'm taking the Ducks on this one, dude. They've been the best team, the most consistent team all year long. Were the things a little shaky at the beginning of the year? Yeah, but
Yeah.
they did play a good Boise State team. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, they barely beat Boise State," and now we see why.
Right.
So, um, I'm really interested to see how Boise State fares in the playoff situation. But
Right.
that being said, I'm taking the Ducks. I think it's gonna be by a convincing margin, maybe by one or two touchdowns. I think they're just the better team in this situation. Penn State can't seem to win big games. They can't beat Ohio State, and if they can't beat Ohio State, they can't beat Oregon.
Right.
That's just my thought on that. But then again, stranger things have happened, so we shall see.
Right. Right. I think we're going to see some strange things if this conference championship weekend goes the way that it possibly could. I'm going to take Oregon as well. Pretty cut and dry, like you said, most consistent team all year. They've looked very good. They have what could be a Heisman candidate in Dylan Gabriel for sure. He's in the award for the best quarterback in the country as well, which is rightfully so. I think he's in the award for the best offensive player in the country. Also, I think a finalist
He's the
if I'm not
third
mistaken.
place.
Yep, yep. And then Dan Lanning is just a fantastic coach. One of the
Oh yeah,
best young
Mike
coaches, if
Norvell
not,
tree
yeah, yeah, absolutely. If
and
not one
Kirby
of the
Smart.
Yep. Yep. If not one of the best, young coaches in the game for sure. And just with everything that I've seen from Penn State this year, just not super impressive. I feel like in the games where they really could have won over some
Mhm.
of that favoritism from the committee, which I think they still have, or, from outsiders like us looking in and watching the game. Very bad game plan against Ohio State. And then when you just look elsewhere on their schedule, you just kind of wonder, is there that real signature game, that signature win, that signature,
Right,
okay,
exactly.
right, kind of like with like I was just saying with Texas, you take a look around on their schedule and it's like, okay, they struggle with Minnesota on the road. Of course, they lose to Ohio State by 3. They almost, excuse me, by 7. They almost lose to a bad USC team on the road. They have to inch it out, in overtime against them. And I'm not going through and nitpicking their schedule, but I just think they're going to be really outmatched in this game. And I
Of
think we could
course.
see a blowout, Allen. I think we could see a 35-14 type of outcome with the
I
Ducks
would disagree with you.
over. Say again.
I said I would not disagree with you. They just don't have the faculty to keep up with what Oregon has to offer. They're explosive on defense, they're explosive on offense,
Yep. Yep.
and everybody
And,
wants to talk about the Wisconsin game a few weeks
right.
back, and I'm just like, Wisconsin's not bad.
No, they're not.
And they're a
They're
Big
not.
Ten
And
team at the end of the day. So
right. And Oregon had to get their offensive line right earlier in the year. We all
exactly.
remember that. They looked a little shaky, but there were a
Hmm.
lot of people that were looking shaky at the beginning of the year. And now here we are. Oregon still an undefeated team at the top. The only undefeated team left in college football,
Yeah.
actually. Big 12 championship game. Oddly enough, Arizona State and Iowa
Hmm.
State. Colorado misses the cut, and I wanted to see those Buffs possibly have an at-large bid, in this college football playoffs. Tell me how you're feeling about this one.
Man, so I was texting you, I think it was last week, about the possibility of 4 teams in the hunt: BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, and Arizona State Sun Devils. And I was just like, man, wouldn't it be something if Arizona State and Iowa State got in there? And lo and behold, that's what we got. And I'm all about the underdog. You know me, because BYU has been the most consistent all season until they dropped 2 games in a row.
Yep.
Bad. And
Yep.
then Colorado loses some games they could not afford to lose.
Yep.
You know, and they got a Shadur, they got a Travis Hunter. They're great. I love watching them. They're fun to watch.
Yep.
Deion's a good coach. But ultimately, Arizona State, Iowa State are the best teams in the conference to me.
Yep.
They passed the eye exam. They've had a pretty decent schedule. I think Iowa State stayed undefeated for a while before they they got their first few losses. So I think they only have 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I just, I think it's going to come down to the wire in this one again. They're really talented teams on both sides.
Right.
Um, you know, I think I'm my gut's telling me Arizona State in this one because
Arizona State.
they just been playing some really clean football the last few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with you on most of those points. However, I think I'm going to go the field and take Iowa State in this one. I think it's going to be a
Don't
great
blame
Big
you.
12 showdown. I think it's going to come down to the wire as well. I think both of these rosters are talented. Clearly, as you said, being some of the best teams, the 2 best teams in the Big 12 as they will play for the championship. I'll take Ohio State here, and then to finish it out, the Mountain West Conference Championship game, UNLV versus Boise State. It's crazy to think that teams like SMU, Arizona State, you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
No, you're good.
Um, it's amazing to me to see UNLV in a Mountain West championship. Like it in the hunt for possibly a playoff situation.
Right.
Someone like a UNLV. And I gotta give I forget his name. I know it's Barry something.
Mm-hmm.
We were scouting him for a potential coordinator position. But he's doing a great job with UNLV this year. But man, Boise State's been great all season. Who are we
Yeah, they
kidding?
have.
Ashton Jeanty is something else. He is a monster.
Yep.
That guy's like one of the best running backs since Derrick Henry. You know what I'm saying? And Melvin Gordon.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
So
that Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson type of
right.
running back that you're just
Yes.
looking at like this guy is just
Just feed him the ball.
Ollie Gordon. Who? Like I feel like
Yeah.
Ollie Gordon's falling off the map because Ashton Jeanty's
Yeah.
just taking over all of the headlines for the best running back in the nation.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. But I'm gonna take the Broncos, man, the Boise State Broncos here in this situation. Great season by UNLV. I think they're doing fantastic things there. I think their coach is gonna get a bigger job somewhere else sometime soon. Um, but I'm definitely going with Boise State on this one.
I'll take the Boise State Broncos as well. I think it's going to be another big game for Ashton Jeanty. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, they're not playing anybody." Ashton Jeanty is, just running through, high school and low-level college players. Well, tell me why he has the best
Hmm.
Heisman argument for any running back that's won the Heisman here
That's
lately.
true.
By
That's very
over
true.
1,000 yards, by over 10 touchdowns, by over many yards per carry. I mean, it's crazy, right? And I just think that's really going to be able to carry Boise State throughout this game, and I think they'll win fairly handily. Now, I do think UNLV will come to play. You're going to think, I think outside of Oregon State, Penn State, I think you're going to see a lot of good games this weekend that are going to be very close. I just think Penn State is the most outmatched team of the weekend,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Oregon's got their number for sure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that could be a disappointing one that some people, we might see them complaining about it.